Sure. There we go. All right. So thanks everyone for joining us this evening, and thanks for hosting me, the Bridge River Valley residents. And I just wanted to acknowledge before we start in that those have had great loss in the community, and that this is something I'm really aware of. And yeah, my heart and my thoughts are with you as you are on this journey, knowing that you're very supported with the community members that are around you and others that are helping along the way. And I hope this information will give you some piece of the puzzle that you're going to be dealing with along the way. And yeah, my intentions are good to try to help along the way. So tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about invasive species and wildfire. Um, and I will speak a little more specifically about some of the species that you might find in your area, but I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about actual plants and ID and things like that. I'm going to let people ask questions and follow up with me one-on-one about those things. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jackie Rasmussen. I'm the executive director for the Lillooet Regional Invasive Species Society. And I'm starting off with a photo of basically below my house. I'm not, I'm very familiar with the fire smarting and living in a forest and in the interface. This is a picture quite some time ago, but something that we do quite often, and we burn off our property to reduce fuels. And it's an example of what I'm going to be talking about, which is invasives can create a fuel hazard. And in this case, we just have grasses that are here that are agronomic, but they are an example of what invasive plants can also do. And yeah, this is us, my husband and my son, doing a burn off in the spring. So I just also want to explain to people that I'm part of a very well-connected network. And this is a map of British Columbia that shows all of the regional invasive species committees. And we are in touch quite often, and we collaborate very closely with the Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council, as well as the Thompson-Nicola Invasive Species Council. Fraser Valley, Okanagan, and Caribou are kind of our direct neighbors. And we have monthly calls. And if I don't know the answer to a question, it's likely that one of these people that I'm connected to definitely do. So here's a picture of the closer up of the boundary of our region and where we work. And it is the northern Shetland boundary, and we overlap a little bit on the north and east side with the Thompson-Nicola Invasive Species Council, because when our boundary was created, we had Shetland members, and this was important to them for us to cover the entire region. And this is a very important part of our work is the collaboration with our Shetland partners, and work very closely with the six northern communities, Lillooet Tribal Council. We have a memorandum of understanding with the Statliam Chiefs Council Lands and Heritage Committee and Statliam Government Services. So what I'd like to go over briefly is we need to define what an invasive plant is. And that is it is a plant that's not from BC, that's very competitive. And it's important that it definitely has negative impacts. So there's and lastly, it doesn't have any natural enemies. So a lot of times they were brought over as pretty plants. People, were like, we love this, we want to, or it had medicinal values and they wanted to plant it in North America, and it came from usually Europe or Asia. And the key is really the negative impacts is one of the key things, because there's a lot of what we call weedy species out there, but they don't necessarily have negative impacts. Um, and the other piece of that is that they were brought over, the disease, the four-legged animal, whatever was keeping it in check in its native habitat definitely didn't come with it. So why should we be concerned? There are a lot of impacts that invasive species have. And here are a few of them. So in the top left-hand corner, that is knotweed going through somebody's patio. So infrastructure can definitely be damaged. In the lower left, that is bats that are caught and died in burdock. Thanks to Ian Routley for that photograph. It shows that wildlife are definitely at risk. The top picture on the right-hand side, this little one was pulling a spurge species, donkey-tail spurge, with their mother and brushed their face and got these burns and blisters. So it can harm human health. And then you can see livestock can also be impacted the same as wildlife. Um, you may or may not recognize that that horse may have been a local horse in your area. The other thing is that's really important to understand is how they get around. So in the top corner, obviously we can spread them. The little burrs get stuck in our boots. In the picture with the machinery, there's mud that gets stuck in the tracks. There are seeds that can last in the soil for years, even decades, and they get transported and they get, left in a new area. There's other vectors, which is what we call how they spread. That is a tire with puncture mines stuck in it. And then just it's important to note that exposed soil plus the vectors give it the key ingredients for a invasive infestation to pop up. The other thing I have here is wind, water, and people trading plants. And this is an important thing to note for many of the non-residents or part-time residents, is that if you're bringing things up from a different region, it's very important to note, could it be invasive in the Bridge River Valley? The other thing to note is to check the soil for insects that may be hitchhiking a ride on the soil. So the other way that invasives spread are water, wind, and wildlife. So wildlife, I've got this cute picture of a mule deer, and I've often found tiny patches of, I mean, not tiny, but patches of invasive species like oxeye daisy and Dalmatian toadflax in the middle of where you think is absolutely nowhere. Like I'm hiking off trail even sometimes near my house, and boom, up pops this, oxeye daisy or otherwise. And you know that it's probably deer or a bird that's pooped it out and it's started to spread. The other is this is a picture of my staff along the railway, and definitely infrastructure like that, and especially hydro. They're the movement and the vehicles are can spread things. So I just wanted to point out the link that's definitely being made between invasive species and wildfires and climate change. So this is a picture of a article um, talking about the invasive grasses that made Maui's fires so devastating. And so it says, weeks have passed since the deadly fire in Lahaina, one of several wildfires that started on Maui and on Hawaii on the Big Island on August 9th, 2023. Many of us learned about the fire triangle, that without one of the three components, oxygen, heat, and fuel, a fire cannot start or be sustained. High winds with gusts up to 80 miles per hour were recorded on the dry leeward slopes of the islands from Hurricane Dora passing 550 miles to the south and exacerbated by a strong high pressure system north of the islands, which led to low humidity. As officials and communities look for answers about the ignition sources, it is worth understanding how the islands have come to have an overabundance of fuel and the challenges ahead with the synergetic effects of invasive species and climate change. So, this is a thing. This is not something we're making up or we're like hyping up. This is actually identified by science, and it's very concerning. I also wanted to just point out some of the things about climate change that you probably already know. My colleague Lisa Scott presented at our AGM in 2021, and this is a graph that she showed just showing what's happening with our historical climate and with climate change. And this shows that the mean temperatures are definitely increasing and that we have a lot of variability, even more cooler temperatures in the spring, and then these hot, dry springs as well, and then later frosts, and it's like there's many things that are occurring as a result of climate change. There's the hot, dry weather and more record. Obviously, we're experiencing this right now. So, a few other things that climate change is um, causing are things like reduced snowpack. This leaves roots exposed to cold, and then also low summer runoff. Then that contributes to drought. There's disturbance. Obviously, there's wildfire, floods, and wind events. There's even hail and ice storms, and then early spring heat and late spring frost. So, as many of you know, we're living in a new climate reality, and invasive plants, species, and invasive species in general can take advantage of the changing climate and changing conditions much more easily than native plants. So, with little or no natural enemies and aggressive spreading tactics like thousands of seeds, invasive plants are likely to shift their range and cause new populations in areas that we're not expecting. So, they can survive disturbances, and seeds can stay viable in the soil for years, if not decades. So, just as a reminder of what we've experienced already, which is devastating. This map shows the region in which Elris operates, and here are the fires that have occurred in the last few years that have been so large. So the key thing to note here is the amount of red that is showing, and red indicates this highest severity of burn, which is leads me to my next slide. So obviously, so this is the picture out in the Gun Creek area. And obviously, I'm sure what you notice about this place is the lack of vegetation on the soil. And then what complicates things also in your area is the volcanic ash. And for years, I know there were people in the Ministry of Forests in the research section, Graham Hope being a soil scientist, did a lot of work and a lot of course, coming out to this area, looking at it, trying to get trees to grow and looking at ways to make sure that things grew back after logging. So my question is, and my concern would be like the rain events that are going to occur or could occur, and what happens to this soil. And the thing that Virginia Ogerly from UBC is finding is that the Ministry of Forests and others were saying that the hydrophobic soils, which are the layer of basically chemically altered vegetation that creates this layer through which no water can get through, doesn't last just for 2 years, but she's finding that the hydrophobic layer was tested in the McKay Creek area and was definitely lasting beyond into the third year after the fire. And she'll be continuing to monitor that going into her PhD over the next 2 to 3 years. So I'm going to share with you what happened in McKay when we had a large rainstorm. Here are some major washouts that occurred along the West Pavilion Road. Um, the rainstorms basically washed out multiple watersheds and, or at least down major waterways, and created large caverns. The the actual culverts were nowhere near as big as they needed to be. They went from something that was like looked like the solid, sort of the diameter of a basketball, to something that was, I don't know, at least 4 to 5 feet tall. So they've had to really increase them. So these were some of the spots along the West Pavilion that had to be repaired. The other thing I want to point out are some species that are um, inc increase wildfire risk. And in over in our area, and I was talking about this just before we started the presentation, is we're finding in the McKay Creek area than about sort of in last year for sure, and especially going into this year, is that this plant called cheatgrass is filling in and really taking over a lot of spots in the McKay Creek area. So Virginia is really looking at this. This picture is actually in Lillooet itself, up on the Plickett Reserve, and basically they burned all off this year. But you can see this green. All this green is actually cheatgrass. I took this picture, I think around April. And when you're driving to Kamloops next time, or even coming back, anything that you see on the hillside that's a red color right now is this plant. And unfortunately, it's creating a continuous fuel. It does stay low, but it's going to be one of those things where it loves the roadside disturbance. And if there's an ignition point on the roadside, it could cause things to spread into a more brushy area and cause the fire to actually get bigger than it would normally if there was more of a native grass and patchy areas, something that didn't have as continuous fuel. So I just wanted you to keep an eye out for this plant. It's definitely something that if you have dogs, you'll have maybe experienced this. They get them in their ears and such. And it's something that if you see small patches of it, it's really good to get rid of it. It's called cheatgrass because it's the first thing to come up and it produces seed before all the other grasses. So it basically cheats them and yeah, it grows first and seeds out first. Another type of plant that thankfully we don't have very much, but we do have two sites. One of them is out Jamie Creek and has been eradicated and is being monitored by the Independent Power Project out there, as well as Split Rock, who works for them. But this is Scotch broom, and we didn't have Scotch broom up until about 3 years ago in our region, and now we have two spots that we're monitoring. Thankfully, both of them in the last few years have been zero plants found, but this plant is everywhere on the island, and it's something that I'm concerned about because out in your region you have more of a coastal influence. And with climate change, what we can see is that potentially plants shifting and moving northward or moving into different ecosystems they weren't normally in. So this plant has a lot of hot oils in it that creates a lot of fire risk, and we we really don't want it. So it's something to keep an eye out for. Yeah, Michelle, I see you. Go ahead.
Yeah, uh, Jackie, do you have a pic? Is that in the fall? Does it change color?
Uh,
Or,
it's it's in the spring actually.
oh, okay.
I have another photo of it later on, and I'll show you it
Okay.
up close. It's in the pea family.
Okay.
Um, and it's on our website, so you can check out like
Okay.
different photographs. But
Okay.
yeah,
Thanks.
the yeah, go ahead, Sal.
Because that's what's in the sea star.
Oh, I can't
Um,
quite hear you. Do you want to put your mic down? Or it is there?
is,
Okay.
yeah, is the Scotch broom in the sea to sky corridor?
Oh, yes, it is. Thank you. I could hear you better now. Yeah, it definitely is in the sea to sky corridor. I can't tell you where. I think it goes up to, they have a containment line, I think in Squamish, but but I'd have to confirm exactly where where it is closest, but it's definitely in the sea to sky.
Yeah, because we got a lot of the property owners in the last a few years are from the sea to sky that
Yeah.
have bought property up here.
And that's my concern too, is just yeah, the transport. The other thing that Elris is very actively involved in, and we're about to do a delegation to the Statliam Chiefs Council about it, is the hydro projects and the amount of traffic that we will just get even more traffic happening, and they'll be coming from out of region. So we're working on that for sure. Yeah. So this example here is a site actually out in the West Pavilion, but this is Canada thistle. So on the left-hand side, it's quite a dense population of Canada thistle, and Canada thistle is everywhere. You guys will have it out there too. It's a thistle with a smaller head. Bull thistle has something that's quite large. I'd say you're probably the head of the is about like the size of a toonie, whereas this would be more loony or even smaller, purple flower. But what I just wanted to point out is what I was um, telling you before about what I was concerned about is the photo on the left is the spring of this year. So in May, my team and I went out, my two staff and I went out to this spot to release a biocontrol, actually a gall stem fly that creates some damage and has been tested for years and is now being released. Is it's not new. It's something that's been showing to work for Canada thistle. But you'll notice all the gray, and excuse me, the gray is the old dead plants. So the road is just up here, the main West Pavilion. So you can see if somebody had like sparked something off to the side. Now you can see this has already had a forest fire. But if it were a still a standing green forest, this gray dead matter is definitely fuel for in that could cause in the fire to spread more quickly. All right. So that's kind of the bad news part of the whole, and what I'm really here to give you some tips and some information about like what can you do? Because it can seem overwhelming as soon as you start to look at invasive plants and to see them out there. You start to see them everywhere. I tell my new staff that I'm sorry, but I'm giving you weed goggles, and you're never ever going to be able to take them off because you're going to see invasive plants and species everywhere, which is a good thing for early detection and rapid response, but is not a great thing when you're trying to get places because my poor children, when they were younger, did not love that I had to stop on the side of the road and take pictures of plants all the time. So, first of all, I want to, you know, press upon you how important just knowing what should normally be around your property or in the area, like what's native and what's invasive. And so just like having the tools and being getting familiar with the plants out there really hones your eye into like being curious about a an odd looking plant. Is that supposed to be there? That's interesting. That purple flowering thing, is it native or invasive? And what I'm really excited to tell you about when you're learning about these things is that this app, which is there's two apps, but it's basically the same organization, which is iNaturalist. And the new iNaturalist version has this amazing artificial intelligence that when you hover your that app photograph, like basically the camera over a plant, it will start to give you information about that plant. Nor it has a lot of invasive plants in it. And Seek is the kids version, which is very similar, but you don't even have to have a login. And it's really, really gotten so much better with so many, like thousands, hundreds of thousands of observations from people across North America, is teaching this app to identify plants. So I definitely check that out. And the other is to look on our website. We just updated it so that the invasive plants that are on there, we show the priority. And the basically the definitions of the priority. So you can see what's like the higher priority species versus something that might be more common out there. The other thing is best management practices. So as Sal pointed out and I was talking about, is just vehicles are definitely culprits for transporting hitchhikers. You can see this knapweed plant that is underneath this vehicle. And, you might have just pulled off to the side of the road to like have a quick snack or maybe a bio break. And you could have driven over an invasive plant and then, you're on your way to your cabin, and then this thing gets deposited. So this is important to check that out. Um, And the other thing would be cleaning off your vehicle. This is another picture of, somebody pressure washing their vehicle. The other is just cleaning your own gear. I didn't really have a great picture. I need to take a picture of myself or something, actually. This guy's a hunter, but he's using this boot brush to like clean off his boots. And that goes to the same fact that I was talking about before, where there are seeds. We have a monitoring guide from the Ministry of Forests that talks about how long we need to monitor certain plants after we have found that site to be free of that plant, because there are by this different seeds of different plants can stay viable in the soil for different times. Usually it's a couple of years, but say for instance, parasitic dodder, which is not really a plant, but it's definitely an invasive, it it has seeds that can stay viable in the soil for 60 years. So this is one that you really, yeah, don't want to go to seed, and you'd have to get your grandkids to monitor, unfortunately. The other thing too, this is a picture of Dr. Ian Routley and Catherine, who worked for me before. It's just getting rid of small patches of invasives when you can, and basically, maybe helping your neighbors remove. It's just to try to keep it to a manageable. As soon as it gets so big, it's very hard, and you have to come at it with different tools and different tactics. So identifying things that are on your property or on, the neighboring roadside, is definitely one thing to keep an eye out for so that you don't have a huge job to deal with. And we really do recommend that you just bag it. If you have a place where you're, you know, basically, if there's a specific situation that you want to talk to me about, just give me a call or email me, because there are certain things that we can do if it's, a lot of plant matter or such. You may not have the capacity to bag it all and take it to the transfer station. So we depending on the plant, we might be able to look at some different tactics for what's on your property. The other thing is just really not bringing, or being very careful about what horticulture species you're bringing up from the coast or from different areas, or even from Kamloops. Thankfully, Timbermart, I just want to give a shout out to them. They have committed to not selling invasive plants or seeds. So if you go there, you're safe. You can feel very comfortable that whatever you're buying there isn't going to necessarily spread. I mean, I can't, at least they're not invasive. So if there's a horticulture plant that's a bit of an aggressive spreader, that would be something to talk to them about. Their Bernadette is very knowledgeable. The other thing I definitely want to, point out is the Fire Smart guide the landscaping guide has some really good ideas, and some, criteria that are generally good to look at and to keep, to adhere to. But there are some plants in there, a few trees mostly, that are on the ministry watch list. So it's good to ensure that whatever you're looking at in that guide is relevant and best for the region or the ecosystem in which you're planting. And that's something you can get advice from, Timber Mart or other places. So you don't want to like introduce something. And this is donkey tail spurge. This is the spurge that the little person had got the burns from. And I just want to point out that it's definitely fire smart. It is a succulent, it's low growing, it's drought resistant, but it's invasive. So having the Lillooet Plantwise guide here is a guide that we made with in collaboration with Split Rock, and so it's a good place to go to. We have it online as a flip book, so if you go to our website and under Take Action, Know Before You Go gardening, you can get a link to this, and there are invasive plants, and then there's alternatives that you can plant instead. So native species really are, they're drought tolerant, they're like hardy, and they're gonna last the winters. Though those are the native species are really what you want to go for when it comes to like replanting things. The other thing I just want to point out is there are things like this Firewise blend. There's stuff out there that, they're being marketed for people to put out there. There's pollinator mixes, there's all these mixes, and everyone wants to save the bees. I mean, I want to save the bees, but we need to ensure that the ingredients in these blends are invasive free because even West Coast seeds are not, fully compliant. Mind you, there are no rules in BC banning the sale of invasive plants. And so thankfully, I looked it up and you have to dig a little bit more. And I looked up the ingredients and the product details, and there were no invasive plants on the list. And so I actually kept it and I planted it in my garden. So I'm seeing how it comes up, and it's a little bit of an experiment. So just to be aware, the other thing too, if you're thinking, and I've explained this before to people, is if you're, obviously there's areas that are quite large, and there's a seeding program that's been going on, is amazing. So kudos to the local residents for getting that program going. And the seeding is just important when you're using any type of seed mix to ensure that you get the certificate of seed analysis from the person, the vendor. If like say somebody like Timbermark can't give it to you, they'll give you the seed company, and then you have to phone the company because sometimes hiding in seed mixes or even grass blends are invasive plants. The federal weed or sorry, the Federal Seed Act allows 5% weed seeds because you can imagine how hard it would be to get an invasive free or an uncontaminated seed mix. And what will happen is it will show what the contaminants are that are, not necessarily supposed to be in there. And you can make sure that they're either low risk species or they're something that, if they're a high risk species, then we don't want that batch and you want to get a new batch. Okay, and then basically I would say that you're always trying to choose low growing species that won't aggressively move into the forest is what you're trying to go for. And then, as I was speaking about before, I just want to also end with a good message that the Lillooet Regional Invasive Species Society is working with Dr. Jennifer Grenz and her Indigenous Ecology Lab and the University of British Columbia. And this is work that's being done on the McKay Creek wildfire and understanding what vegetation is coming back, looking at soil components. And this, I'm hoping, is going to also have lessons for the other fires. So by connecting with these students and bringing research into the area, we really hope that this is going to help, inform true and actionable restoration and what can be done on the ground, practical things. Because Dr. Grimes has always said that she just wants to contribute to community and to bring practical solutions back. And this is master's student, I should say PhD student now. I need to change that. Virginia successfully acquired her master's just this spring and graduated and is now continuing in the area to do her PhD. And there are two other students working in the region, Raylani Kessler, who is working on, um, she's working on mostly to do with native plants and invasives and soil and some of the associations between soil components like the mycorrhizae in the soil and the associations. And that's about all I can say at this point because she's still working on exactly what she's going to do. And Joyce is working on the McKay Creek fire specifically, also to do with what's growing back, but she's using drone footage that was taken last year. And so she's using this high resolution drone footage, and she's going to match different plants with the drone footage so that we understand the spectrum of and the basically what light that a particular plant represents. And so what it can do in the future is once you've identified that, say, leafy spurge or any other invasive and identified its sort of its spectrum, I'm out of my league a little bit here, but basically then we can do other drone footage in other areas to map out infestations that are off the beaten track and look at vegetation trajectories that are both native and invasive in the larger fire area and understand what's growing back and where infestations are and potentially what treatments are needed. Okay, so that's really ends the majority of my talk. But one thing that I did promise before we go into questions is I did say, so I also will be providing a PDF of this so that it can be shared to anyone. And there are pictures of our priority plants. And so if you're coming from different areas, you definitely want to check out their websites like Fraser Valley, Metro Band, Sea to Sky, because we don't want their invasives either. But definitely these all are on our invasive, elris.ca. And so this is in sort of order of our priority. So this is eradicate species. But what I wanted to just quickly show you is some of the species that you would commonly find out in your area and also show you the Scotch broom. So here's the Scotch broom, just a little bit closer up. You can see that it has a pea-like flower, and it mostly flowers early spring, like May. So when I was given the report of Seton Ridge, that's where the other site is. So out on the Duffy, and then you go up and over the Forest Service Road down towards Seton Lake. This plant was found on a hydro access road. And so we pulled it in May and it was just about to flower.
Mm. Yeah,
So
I've never seen any of that.
that's a good thing. That's
Yeah,
very good.
yeah.
So that one is the Scotch broom. And then if I go forward a little bit, common tansy is
Yes.
very common in your area.
I got rid of all of that at our place. It was everywhere here when we first moved in, and over the years, every time I see it, I just pull it, pull it, pull it, and
Oh,
I've
that's
almost got rid
amazing.
of it. Yeah.
That's amazing because it's not an easy one, and it's definitely one that I've seen come in as a result of logging in the
Yeah.
way out in the middle of nowhere.
There's a big patch on Dale Road.
Yeah, yeah. Here's another one that you'll see around Gun Lake, and a little bit of Horiolisum, but the yellow toad flax, it looks a little bit like a bristlebrush, and that one's definitely been increasing. So that's another common one you'll see out there. Um,
Hawkweed.
Unfortunately, orange hawkweed is just it came into the region through the sea to sky and it couldn't be stopped. It's everywhere in Goldbridge and
Gilbert and
it
Gaylord has it too, I think.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And but if you see this, just if right away, just
Mhm.
just pull it as soon as you can. It's so important to nip it in the bud. It's so terrible. It reproduces by these flowers turn into seeds like dandelions. It has underground roots and it has over the ground stolons like strawberries. So it reproduces three
Oh,
ways. Yeah.
wow.
You'll also see maybe some scentless chamomile, but more likely, uh, well, you obviously definitely
Ugh,
have burdock. Burdocks everywhere, and
Nemesis.
unfortunately moved by everything, including bears. And it loves to grow next to wet areas, which puts songbirds and bats at risk. Yeah, it's nasty. There's the Canada thistle, but oxeye daisy is another one that you'll
Mhm.
see as well. And spotted knapweed,
Ugh.
not so much diffuse, but spotted knapweed
We
is
have a
definitely,
lot of knapweed along West Gun Lake Road. A lot.
yeah.
A
And
lot.
it
Mm.
unfortunately diffuse knapweed really responds well to all the biocontrol that's been put out on it, but the spotted knapweed not as good. So
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. It does have agents on it. There's these little weevils, but definitely the diffuse
Yeah.
tends to be knocked back better by biocontrol. They're doing a
Mhm.
lot of studying about that, right? Like over the last few years through a joint project with the um, Summerland. Research Station, Ag Canada, as well as the Ministry of Forests.
Hmm. I would say that the spotted knapweed and the oxeye daisy are the two most popular ones that I see along West Gun Lake Road.
Yeah, and the
But
other thing that's kind of cool, actually, Michelle, I've been, speaking with the biocontrol specialist because we put that biocontrol out for Canada Thistle. But what's really exciting is they are now releasing, it's been years they've been testing this. It takes a long time for biocontrol to be fully approved because they want to make sure that it's not going to jump onto one of our native species. But they've approved a biocontrol for oxeye daisy. So
oh,
I've been really
hmm.
putting up my hand
Yeah,
very, very, please take us. And we're very, because the biocontrol specialist is based in Kamloops. And so it's easy for me to get, to
yeah,
run over there. So I'm hoping that we might be one of their top picks to try these out because it's everywhere.
yeah.
This is parasitic daughter, which I wanted to point out that you may see along the roadsides, especially on Highway 40. It just seems to be moved by graders and by the mowers, and it's definitely all over the Bridge River Valley on Highway 40. And this is the thing I was saying that is not a plant. It has to have a host, and so it loves legumes, and this is right now. It loves alfalfa. So
Huh.
it's definitely keep an eye out for this. Thankfully, it's not that hard to get rid of because as soon as you basically dig up or cut off the host, then this thing dies. But the
So what
key
is
is
it
get
if it's not a
it's
plant?
a parasite.
Oh,
Yeah. So this stuff, this spaghetti stuff is what comes out of a tiny, it looks like the size of a chickpea and the same sort of color, the seed, and then a little, it sends up a sprout. And if it can't burrow itself into another plant and live off it, it'll die.
whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
But anyways, it's not as prevalent in
Hmm.
my experience out there, but it's definitely like could come out because of the vectors.
Mhm.
And that is all I have. I'm going to stop sharing and give a chance for people to ask some questions yeah. And if you're okay, we'll still keep recording and then I'll shut it off afterward. But yeah.
Um, it's not my property, but it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's almost near impossible to deal with. Um, what are the options? I
All
know
right.
people have used, can you hear me?
Yeah.
What was the plant? I heard the last part, but what was the plant again?
Knapweed.
Oh, knapweed. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And is burning it with a torch? Does that work? Not that you want to do it this time of year.
I have to be careful about using fire and recommending fire. I don't want to be accused of creating, yeah. So I would say pulling it is your best option. And especially with spotted knapweed, I'd say diffuse knapweed, you don't even need to worry about the roots as much, but spotted knapweed can be a short-term perennial, so it'll grow back from its roots.
Mhm.
And but primarily it's a cedar. So definitely pulling is one of the best way to remove it with manual means. The thing you're up against is a seed bank cell, is just that, and then if you have if you have an area that you are seeing that it could potentially or is coming into your yard or is in your yard, then that's where I would really try to use some heavy seeding and some sod if you can water it. But I mean, primarily it's if you have an area that's gravelly and, disturbed all the time, like a roadside, then, you just have to keep pulling it until like the seed bank is like less, not going to be, um, coming up as much. But that is a problem because it has such a the seed bank is going to be there, right? I Yeah. So if there's a specific, I always say and offer to people that if I'm out there and I can come by and look at like, okay, where, especially if it's huge and a huge infestation is like, okay, what are the priority spots? Like, where do we want to keep it away from? Sometimes it's a particular garden. Sometimes it's a place where it's being moved from, that kind of thing. Sometimes it's where like we were removing some burdock down Texas Creek Road because it was where the bears would come through all the time. And so we were just getting rid of it there so that we're trying to address the vector that was occurring. So sometimes we have to be strategic about where we're removing it because there's just so much of it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what we've got here. It's everywhere
yeah.
along the roadsides.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Last, last year I went on a knapweed binge, I guess you could call it,
yeah.
after the fire, and I was just like, you are not growing back here. And for like a stretch along West Gun, every time I walked the dogs, I was just pulling knapweed. And this year, like I pulled so much last year, and it doesn't even look like I pulled any.
No,
I
it's
know.
so
So
disheartening,
it is
right?
so disheartening. And then last
Um,
year, I pulled a bunch of Canada thistle at the top of our property next to the logging road.
yeah.
And by the fall, it was already growing back.
Yeah.
It's like, this is
Yeah.
not cool. So
Yeah.
what about, there's all these like natural, they call them natural weed killers, like vinegar and baking soda or whatever, and you mix and spray. Like, is anything like that work on them?
No, not
No,
really. You're just gonna
no.
make yeah, it's basically what you're doing is you're top killing it. You're not killing the roots at all.
Yeah.
And you're also adding acid to your soil. So you're
Mm,
like creating a different soil chemistry that isn't good for the soil. I mean,
right,
mind you, knapweed does release chemicals into the soil as well to like that's allelopathy and it will create kind of the only I can grow here versus no native plants.
right,
Um, but those home remedies are really like they're non-selective. They're killing everything.
yeah,
And they're really not doing a great job. They're just like top killing things. So
yeah,
unless it's a specific plant that's only a cedar, but for most invasives, they don't work well at all.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got to think, how we've had knapweed for so long now, and the seeds, you pull all that knapweed and you're just opening up for all those new seeds to grow again, you know, because
Exactly.
it's so many, and then the grader comes along and grades and just pushes them all down. Yeah.
I
What
know. So
about,
that seeding, like I think this year we're gonna try a few experiments. I got some seed that's like a low growing fescue. It's called Eco Turf. We used it on my lawn after we put there was a water line that had to be put in for the neighbor. Um, and it does create a dense sod. And so I'm gonna just get my staff on some locations, put some of it out there and see how it does.
Mhm,
Because, and just take some information about like when we put it down and what conditions were there and stuff.
mhm,
Because I want to start to really understand a little bit more about seeding and what that can do. Because the other thing is we just really don't want something that's going to create some of these mixes create a lot of fuel. Like
yeah,
my property is an example. We have this the seed mix that had like crusted wheatgrass and intermediary or intermediate wheatgrass and a brome and something else. And the stuff grows like so tall and so thick every
mhm,
year. You really don't want that either. So
no, no. What
I
about
have
mullein?
mullein,
Hmm. Because is
you
that an
know,
invasive? Because they're just
technically,
everywhere up here. And
yeah,
it's,
technically it is. But I mean, over the years, what I've seen it do is like after fire, after the first few years, it's just like it really has a flush.
yeah,
And then it gradually does decrease as more native plants take over. But overall, it doesn't have the same kind of impacts or aggressiveness as some other plants. And so we generally don't worry too much about it. And it does get spread by birds, that's for sure. So
mm,
I mean, if you
hmm,
don't want it on your property, it's not too bad if you can get it before it goes to seed. I,
yeah,
I would I also want to make sure that I don't forget, but I'm going to send you guys the seed dormancy so you can see like the monitoring thing, and it shows it's the information from the Ministry of Forest that we received so that we're monitoring plants for according to how long they last in the soil. And I think it's good information to like for people to understand. So if they were choosing which plants they were targeting, they could understand like how long they're going to have to maybe
Mm,
pull it, or if it's maybe they should be looking at another plant, or yeah.
mm.
Hey,
Can I ask
Jackie,
a question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I so I'm one of the wildfire properties, and I spread the Gun Lake seed mix grass this spring.
Yeah.
What is the difference between that grass spreading and the what's that? The cheat grass? Like, isn't it all gonna spread and all gonna like? I don't know what that mix is like. Like, is it gonna dry out and then it's gonna be fuel anyway, or like, how do I deal with that?
Uh, well, there's no easy answer for that. It's you'd rather have the seed that you've put out than cheatgrass. Um, it's going to have better soil, like better structure in the roots. It's going to hold your soil better. Cheatgrass is very shallow roots, and it's very low growing, and it definitely has spears in its awns. It's gets in everything, shoes. It spreads crazy. So you know, in your situation, Laura, especially with the devastation and so much loss and bare ground, like definitely having something there to hold your soil and get some nitrogen fixing and getting plants on there, and then slowly but surely start to convert some of those with some shrubs and some native, other plants. But the initial, protection of your soil against invasive plants and to against these large rain events, I really think that you have no choice but to use a seed mix like that was recommended, and hopefully get something growing back there, because you're not going to be able to do that as fast with native plants. They just don't grow as fast, and it's yeah, and frankly it's going to be expensive. So this support is really helpful.
Okay, thank you. I
Yeah,
have to
Yeah,
run. Thank you for the presentation. I have to leave now.
no problem. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
fire loss properties, they dug up all the roots and everything else. You see those properties now. And I'm wondering if one of those properties would be okay for you to do like a little project on it, one that's
Oh
getting the
yeah.
grass seeding, right? So you
Yeah.
look at it for 2 or 3 years and see what's happening, if it's getting invasives or,
Would be great, especially on that scale where it was just like, one chosen property. The other thing, it would be great because what's really cool about, say, what Tony's been doing is he kind of took, the initiative and did a bunch of stuff and had the ability to do that. So maybe looking at his property and then somebody else's that just like Laura's that was able to do it just this spring potentially, and understand spring versus fall, kind of, because I've been around for a while, and my understanding is from people that have done a lot of seeding is that fall seeding can be quite a lot better as far as take,
mm,
because then you get the snow fall on top of it, and then when it should stay dormant over the winter, and then in the springtime the moisture plus the seed, it
mm.
sometimes is better. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to be able to do that, and we can talk more offline, and you can connect me with people that might be interested in that. Nice. Well, I'm really thankful for your time, you guys, and I'm glad that we were able to record this so that we can pass it along to the people potentially that weren't able to make it, and then others that we're able to, that can look at it later for a while. So my I'm definitely available via email. You can email me at info@lriss.ca. You can call me on my landline, 250-256-4292. That's my home office. And we can talk more about certain situations or plants and if you have more specific questions.
Thanks, Jackie.
All
Thank you
right.
very
Thanks,
much,
you
Jackie.
guys. All right. I'm going
Have a
to
good evening.